So for the second violin part, again, with Appalachian Sunrise, this is our slower, more sentimental piece that we're going to be playing on our concert. So we want to make sure that all the bow strokes that we're doing here are very legato, or a good legato détaché. In the second violin part, there's a lot of hooks. These hooks are not to be misinterpreted and played like we did for the moire. With these hooks, we want to make sure it's more of the lore style, where we're connecting just a little bit more between the strokes. So be careful that we don't overdo and make them too articulate. We want them to still maintain its legato. So from the beginning, be careful, always know your key signature. So we're in C major, so that means high 2s on the G string, low 2s on the D string, A string, and E string, right? And it starts with a good solid mezzo forte, and then we bring it back down when we get to measure 5. So sustain, keep that sound going, save your bow on the long notes. So when you get to measure 5, this is where we get to these syncopated measures, and it's really important that you're heard, but that we're still at a piano dynamic. Don't be afraid to spend more bow on the first note so that we can play the next 3 beats on the up bow. So plenty of bow on the first note, nice and light so it's not too loud. Right? That's what we're looking for. And then for measure 7, same thing. And when you get to measure 8, those descending quarter notes, very important to play those. Juicy, juicy, juicy. So you want to play those out. Measure 10. So all those syncopations, definitely you're going to have to spend some time practicing those, but make it as legato and seamless as possible. Only small little separations for the hooks. When you get to measure 21, this is not the melody. The melody is actually in the violas and cellos. So we want to make sure we play this underneath them. That's why he's marked us, or she's marked us, piano. And we hear that rise going to the long tone. Let's make sure that we give just a little bit of movement going to there. Measure 25. Same thing, so we bumped up a dynamic level to mezzo piano. And then 29, same thing, mezzo forte. So for that one, be careful, the diminuendo starts in measure 32 and then we gradually get softer. Don't get too soft too soon, but we want to make it effective and then arrive at the piano at measure 35. And then when we get to measure 37, actually 36, we have to build from that piano back up to that forte. So broaden out your bow strokes just a little bit more, give a little bit more weight. Not too much that you start to put accents in, but... When you get to measure 38, be careful of things like the last 2 notes where you have a G to a C, G on the D string to C on the G string. you want to make sure that you set your third finger down appropriately so you don't have to hop and then I don't hear a gap in your sound. Right? That would be a gap. And even still, I've heard students play where you hear some extra notes in there. So keep the fingers down, have it on both strings, so all you have to do is rock and you're set. So same thing at 42, right? And then exaggerate your dynamics, come down to the piano. So, now, with measure 48, we have an accent. Now, accents, if your teachers taught you well, you know that you have to emphasize that accent. But in a legato type piece, you can't force that accent. So we're going to make sure it's really just more of a vibrato accent than anything else. And then measure 50, we all see that comma, and we know that commas mean bowless. But in this case, Miss Gazda is telling you that's where the phrase ends, and then you're starting the next phrase forte. So measure 48, bring out the accent. That's the end of a phrase, and then we start the next one forte. So don't misinterpret that comma as bow lift. It's really just to let you know that the phrase has ended and we're starting a new one. We don't really have the tune at this point. We're still supporting. So we want to make sure that, or Miss Gazda just want to make sure that you're aware of it, so she put the comma there. So practice that. Be very diligent about your dynamics. Then measure 53. We get to the long tones. Make sure you save on your bows. So I don't want to hear. There's no style in that. So be very careful. Make it as legato and sustained as possible. So grow on the long tones, sustain, make it beautiful. So 53. When you get to like 55 and 56, that's a very long time to be holding that note. So think of crescendoing, and then at the very end of the note, we're going to do a diminuendo so that we don't end on a louder tone. Same thing for 59 to 60. Now, the pickup to 61, try and retake. I wouldn't keep the bow stuck at the tip, because if you're stuck at the tip from 59 to 60, and then you do the pickup to 61 here, to get back to the frog, you're going to have that big up bow accent. So retake, reset in the middle. Make sure when you retake that you always set your bow before starting. So try and avoid the crash landing. So 59. Take a lot of work, a lot of practice to get that finesse with your bow, but eventually you'll get there. So just keep working on it. By the way, you should double check that you have a good bow hold. Make sure that the thumb is not bent underneath, that we don't have these what I call banana thumbs. You want to make sure you have bent thumbs and that you're supporting the weight of the bow underneath with that bent thumb. So be very careful about those legato, long passages and sustaining. And then we get to measure 69, the pickups to 69. Pretty straightforward. Just be aware that it is starting to get to a mezzo forte, going to a forte, crescendoing to a fortissimo. So build up those dynamics, save your tone, and then build it up for the end. Measure 80, we do have that ritardando going into 81, and then we have a triple F, fortissimo. So sustain, be nice and loud, and then we see the railroad tracks, those two lines at measure 82. That means to pause, and you gotta look up for the conductor and make sure you're with them. And then you have the allargando at measure 82, and that means to broaden, to stretch out. So we're gonna take even more time, and this is where our divisi starts. So I'll play the bottom part first. So with the divisi there, of course, bottom parts are always more important than top parts. It just gives you more foundation. That's why in the orchestra, we always listen down to the cellos and basses when we tune. So having the bottom part is only going to support the top part. So when they're playing an octave higher, 8 notes higher than you are, it's the same exact note, C, A, B, B, C. So be very careful that if you're playing the bottom part, you know those notes down there, and that you're playing truly fortissimo, or yes, fortissimo all the way to a fortissimo. And dig in, support the top part. We have accents on measure 83. Those accents now, since we've broadened and we're coming to the climax, we can actually give just a little bit more of a martelé stroke, not too much, but just to put more emphasis on those notes, more so than what we did before. And then for the top part, be careful measure 83 that we know exactly where these shifts are, right? So into third position, and from third position, you're playing, instead of your third finger A on the E string, you move your first finger there, and then you have B for your second finger, and then you have C for your third finger. B and C is a half step, so 2 and 3 should be touching. 1 and 2 don't touch. One should be on the tape if you have the third finger tape. Second finger should be on the fourth finger tape, and then your third finger should be touching that second finger. And those are all the notes that you need. So you have C, shift to that same A with your first finger, and then second finger, whole step, and then half step touch for C. Retake. So that's kind of the gist of the second violin part. It's not terribly difficult, but it is, there's a lot of depth, a lot of stuff you can do with bow control, a lot with dynamics. So be aware of all those subtleties and just keep working at it. If you have any questions, of course, ask your teacher, or go ahead and leave some questions in the Google Classroom, and good luck.